Welcome to the MYS Virtual Hangout. Here's your host, MYS Music Director, Raul Gomez.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's time for another MYS Virtual Hangout. Welcome, MYS students, families, friends, community, everybody. I am very excited about our guest this afternoon. Ron Blessinger is joining us. He is a violinist with the Oregon Symphony, where he has been since 1990. He is currently the executive director of 45th Parallel Universe. This is a collective of musicians, mostly from the Oregon Symphony, who are creating some of the most engaging, exciting, and cutting-edge content right now. Actually, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. They have been doing this for a while, and they're amazing. He's been a performer and producer for 14 recordings. He's recorded film music, and he's really an institution here in Portland. So let's go ahead and welcome Ron into our show. And there you are. Ron, welcome to the MYS Virtual Hangout.
Hola, Raul. How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited to talk to you. So let me ask you this before we get into anything. There's this photo of you in the rain that is online, and we're using as our thumbnail for this video.
Yes.
That's an amazing photo. How'd that happen?
Well, a few years ago, I was in New York City. And every time I'm in New York, one of the favorite places that I always have to go to is MoMA,
Yes.
Museum of Modern Art. And they happen to have a wonderful exhibit there called the Rain Room. And, you know, being from Portland, I had to check it out. And the idea of the Rain Room was really, really cool because it basically was a room that was entire shower head. I mean, the entire ceiling was there was rain falling, you know, across the entire room, but it was computer controlled rain.
Oh.
And so
cool.
as you walked through the room, the rain stopped and you were constantly surrounded by rain, but not being rained on, no matter where you moved. It was a really brilliant thing. And so I managed to get a picture taken.
But like just somebody who was with you, or was it like a professional?
No. It was just somebody who was with me. It was just on my iPhone. I was just like, I think this would be a pretty cool picture. So
it is such a, but the lighting and everything, I mean, it's really, really great.
Yeah, well, I can't claim any credit or aptitude for photography at all. Just pure dumb luck that it turned out as good as it did.
And I think, I mean, most people who are watching this saw it because it's on the preview image, but I just put it up on the screen. So we're seeing it right now. It's just very cool. Okay.
Well, it's fun. You know, there's a lot of creativity out there, and you know, MoMA is a great cradle for creative thinking, and always a great place to visit every time I go.
Yeah.
Which I hope is again soon.
I was about to say, I mean, we at this point we really don't know when we'll be able to go outside of our zip code. Really. It's
true. Sad but true.
Where in Portland do you live?
I live in Northeast Portland in Irvington.
Okay.
Near Irving Park, actually, which has been quite active lately. Lots going on there.
Like people are out and walking and enjoying.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of protests. I mean, the helicopters and
Sure.
lots of activity going on in the neighborhood. And my wife and I have lived here in Northeast for 22 years, and have a couple dogs and a couple kids. So here we are.
But your kids are away now, right? They're college.
No, they're here.
Oh, they're home. Okay.
Well, everybody's kids are home. No.
Sure. Right.
Nobody's kids are in college these days, and my son is graduating from college this weekend, which is very, very exciting. Yeah.
Okay. Congrats to him.
Yes.
Virtual graduation, I'm sure. Commencement. Everything.
Yeah. It's quite an accomplishment for him, and I'm very proud of him, of course. And we'll have our own kind of celebration with family via Zoom, and the way that everybody's doing such things. And my daughter is home also from college. So, and we're all just kind of, you know, hanging out together and playing lots of poker.
Nice.
They're learning, and they're learning really fast. So they're taking all my money. But playing lots of poker and, learning how to cook things we've never cooked before, um, and getting to know each other in very wonderful ways. Actually, it's been great having the whole family together. It's unexpected, and at this stage in their lives and in our lives that we would be in such close proximity. But it's been a blessing, no question.
And of course, your wife Anne is also a violinist and a performer and an educator. Are your kids also musicians? Are they into?
Well, they, my wife is a violinist, just as I am, and so my kids were, cursed, doomed to play the violin too, and they played for many years, and they're very, very good at it, and they've gone their other directions in music. Although my son, we play duets all the time now. Get out the fiddle and play the Bach double, which just amazes me after all these years that Daniel can just pick it up and play the Bach double violin concerto, which is, that's not an easy piece.
Yeah.
And so that's, we share music that way, and but they've found the different paths in sports and other interests. So that's where they're at.
Was violin your first instrument?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take us back to Hermiston, Oregon.
Hermiston, out in Eastern Oregon. Have you ever been there, Raul?
I don't think I have.
Oh, you should go.
Though, you know what? I have to look at the map again, but when my wife Sarah and I drove coast to coast, basically to move to Portland back in 2016, we came into Oregon, just the north, just by the river. So maybe that means we must have passed it.
You passed it. You didn't go through it.
Okay.
Hermiston is not on the freeway, but it's about 5 miles off the freeway.
Okay.
You would have driven through Pendleton, and where my dad lives in Pendleton now, and I still have family back there. When I was growing up, Hermiston and Pendleton had a rivalry, high school rivalry.
Oh,
we lost to Pendleton over 50 years in a row in football. So
whoa, okay.
We really had an issue with that.
Did that change ever? I mean,
yes. Oh yes. Well, I mean, Hermiston has grown a lot since I was there, and it's more than doubled, I believe, in population, and everybody's doing very, very well there, and the wonderful people. It was a great place to grow up. Very, very supportive of me and my friends and family. Everybody is very supportive of each other. It's a very good, positive community, a great place to grow up in. And anyway, I was too small to play any other instrument when I was 5. And my mom is a wonderful musician, self-taught musician largely. She was a piano teacher in Hermiston. And when I was growing up, she had 50 piano students at any given time.
Wow, okay, busy studio.
Just constantly. And I was in around my mom, I was going to be a musician one way or the other. And so I was too small to play the piano when I was 5, so I started on the violin. And there was a wonderful Suzuki program in Hermiston and actually Pendleton, 2 heroic teachers there, Betty Fevas and Shirlene McMichael. And Betty in particular, she has a daughter who plays bassoon and has played with Chamber Music Northwest. Betty is also was well known as a visual artist. She was in ceramics. She has a couple of pieces at the Portland Art Museum, and she was a real Renaissance woman. And she played a major role in my life and the direction it took at various times, and became my teacher in Pendleton for many years. And but Hermiston was where it started, and for me, my brother and sister and parents. So they have great ice cream and great watermelons.
Well, that's good to know. And
yes.
This time of the year, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we all grow big and strong there.
Did you come to Portland to hear the Oregon Symphony growing up? Did you spend a lot of time here or not?
I didn't spend as much time here, a lot of time here, to be perfectly honest. I would come to Portland and go to the Schubach violin store and get strings and get my bow repaired. I remember the Oregon Symphony coming on tour to Eastern Oregon and hearing them play, and that's just kind of life-changing stuff to, you know, a young musician in a small town who didn't get a lot of opportunities to hear, you know, professional orchestras, but when I did, it was really an incredible experience. So I didn't have a lot of contact with Portland, but I started taking lessons in the Tri-Cities in Washington. And then in high school, my parents would drive me 6 hours each Saturday, a round trip, 3 hours to Pullman, Washington, 3 hours back.
Wow.
For violin lessons with a professor at Washington State.
Oof. That's dedication.
Yeah, I know. That was quite something. You know, even now I kind of am amazed at that level of commitment that my parents showed me. But because of that, I had more contact with teachers in the system in Seattle than Portland.
Were you aware as a kid of that, like, load, like, you know, and just your parents driving you for that long for violin lessons? Is that something you remember kind of being aware, like, this is crazy, or so generous, rather, is what I mean, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I knew it was unusual. I knew it wasn't normal, but and I, of course, was very grateful. Although, you know, I was, you know, you know, only later in life do I realize just how extraordinary that gift was,
Right.
and try to remind and tell my parents how grateful I am for that start, because, you know, one thing leads to another. I was about to go to college in Washington State, and then I got a phone call from my old teacher, Betty Fivas, advising me to go to Oberlin, this place called Oberlin, and I had no idea what that was or what a liberal arts school was, and I just said, okay. And took an audition and got a scholarship and went to Oberlin and showed up there on day one, and I was like, oh, okay, here I am. Now what?
Yeah. So 4 years there, and then you went to Boston for a master's.
Well, I took a year off and worked on a golf course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mowed greens for a year in near Hermiston. I honestly, I got into the Juilliard school, and I got into a couple of graduate schools, Juilliard and Indiana. And they just, neither school was the right place for me. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'd been to Aspen a couple of times and enjoyed it. And I would have loved to have lived in New York. I was considering USC as well. And didn't really know where I wanted to go, but I knew it wasn't those places. So in lieu of a plan, I went to work. And I had odd jobs, lots of odd jobs, always growing up, but particularly at that time. And the big one was working on a golf course, which is great. You know, I love to play golf. It's a good sport. And then I got a call from Oberlin, from my old school and my old teacher, that this orchestra was being formed, a collegiate level orchestra that was going to tour the United States and Russia. And it was formed by half American students and half students from the Moscow Conservatory. And it was an effort led by Oberlin. The president of Oberlin at the time was a guy named Stephen Starr. This was just before the Soviet Union was breaking up. So it was a really, really interesting time to make such an effort. There was, you know, Glasnost was in the air, the idea of reaching diplomacy and diplomatic efforts and connection to Russian people and Russian culture, and using music as a way of showing, you know, connection. And that was the idea. And so I was invited to be on this extraordinary orchestra tour that actually, you know, David Hatner, your colleague at PYP, he was on that tour.
Playing clarinet.
Yeah, playing clarinet, yeah, wonderful.
Very cool.
Clarinet.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were many others, and we that are in Portland still, and many others from that orchestra that I still keep in touch with. And we toured the United States and Russia for 3 weeks, and came back, and I started grad school in Boston.
Very cool. So that year that you sort of took off and you know, we're working at this golf course, were were you still planning to go to grad school? Was this like a time that you were taking, but you knew that you were going to continue that path, or was it a time of like considering other things?
I'll be perfectly honest. There was never a time where I didn't think I was going to be a musician.
Mm.
I just always knew it, and maybe, you know, just part of it is that it's the only thing I'm really good at. I think there's a lot of truth to that, but also I just kind of felt like it was just it was, I don't want to say it was destiny, but I just feel like it was always going to be my path.
Yeah.
I was going to be in music one way or the other, and
Yeah.
so even being at home at that time and working before going on to graduate school, I think it was a really important time just for me personally to grow up a little and to really confirm in my mind that the next step really was graduate school, and that's where I needed to be.
Yeah, you know, I hear you talking about how your parents would drive you three hours each way to Washington, and then how your teachers at Oberlin, you know, they reach out, they offer these opportunities and
Yes.
mentorship, and you know, we are. I mean, I'll speak for myself also. You know, my parents also, you know, did the same growing up back in Costa Rica. You know, just driving us to rehearsals, to lessons, to all kinds of things, and just giving so much of their time and energy and just so much of their being to empower, you know, me, my sister. And now that I'm a father, you know, and Alma, our daughter, is, you know, she's only 15 months old, but it just that helps me appreciate a lot more all of that when, you know, when it happened, and also just the fact that our teachers and mentors in the world of music, they become such close, and it's such a close relationship. It's one-on-one, very close relationship that stays with you, right?
It stays with you your whole life, you know. I mean, rather you remember, and I remember every single day, every time I pick up the violin and I think, oh yeah, remember that lesson where Mr. Fulkerson put the pencil across my knuckles to make them straight and have a better bow arm. And I remember memes, and they're called memes now, but I mean, you know, pearls of wisdom that were given to me over the years. Every time I pick up the violin, I think about that. I mean, those are things, you know, and your players and MYS and everybody who's listening. I mean, you guys are so lucky to fortunate to have people like Raul in your lives. I mean, these are the people that will stick with you, and the memories will stick with you your whole life, and the lessons you learn, you know, especially at this time of the year when commencement is in the air and all these, you hear lots of, you know, language about, you know, this and that and destiny and fate and all that kind of language. Yeah. But I can tell you that it's true. It's all true. Your teachers, the lessons that you're learning now with these people, these wonderful people, Raul, are going to be lessons that stick with you your whole life. And count yourself as fortunate to have them in your lives.
Well, thank you for that. But yes, I remember my youth orchestra conductor, you know, back in Costa Rica, and my violin teacher of 13 years growing up. And, you know, they are figures in my life that will, you know, their teachings will always be with me. And when I think about this, I feel so lucky that, you know, and not only, you know, in my particular position as, you know, a music educator and a conductor of a youth orchestra, but all of us just playing music, you know, professionally with, you know, our performances, our concerts, what we bring to the stage, and everything that we bring around our music has an impact on these young musicians and everybody around them as well. So it's to think about that, to me, is a reminder of the responsibility that we have.
Yes.
And
yes, indeed.
Yeah,
it's a good point. I'm just as we talk, I'm just thinking about that phone call from my teacher in Pendleton, Betty Fivas, who just caught me just before I was, you know, and dramatically changed the course of my life and had me ending up at Oberlin rather than Wazoo. I mean, you have no idea how these inflection points in your life,
Right.
when they happen. And I'm just, that was life-changing stuff and formed the basis of my entire artistic life.
Very cool. Ron, you've been kind enough to offer a short performance for us. So why don't
Yes.
we transition to that, if you wouldn't mind
Okay.
introducing the piece that you will play.
Well, I'd like to sing for you "Fly Me to the Moon" by,
Yes.
no, just kidding. I'm not going to sing. My wife is floating around and she would not stand for that.
She like tackle you to the ground.
She might run away fast for that.
Ah,
Okay, so this is the Gigue from the E major Bach partita, the last of all the sonatas and partitas. It's a piece I'm really, really fond of, and well, I guess we can talk maybe a little bit about Bach afterwards. Those of you who've studied Bach and know anything about the Gigue dance form, the partitas are dance pieces, and the Gigue is a dance piece in 6/8 time, which is basically like 2 miniature waltzes in a bar. And so this is the Gigue by Bach.
wonderful. Thank you. Nice. Very nice. Bravo. Thank you, Ron. So everybody put your emoji hands together for Ron Blessinger. Bach. Partita number 3 in E major, Gigue. How's your relationship with this music changed over time? Because this is this set of pieces, 6 sonatas and partitas, are something that we violinists and cellists, violists with the suites, it's a lifelong relationship.
Yes, it is indeed. I wrote a blog post about this recently. There's a wonderful, I don't know if you remember the TV show MASH. You ever seen MASH?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a wonderful scene where Radar is being coached on how to talk to an attractive woman who has very sophisticated musical tastes. And Hawkeye tells Radar, he says, you just look at her and you say, ah, Bach. Ah, Bach. That's all you say. So Bach is the perfect social isolation, quarantine composer. He's the ideal composer because, and by the way, I mean, you don't have to look very hard online to see all these musicians that are posting videos of Bach. and everybody kind of recognizes the importance of Bach in these times, and for me, I was not such a responsible violin student. I didn't learn them all while I was in school, and so this is my chance to make up for that. And so I'm making my way through all of them, and right now really struggling with the Chaconne, which is the Mount Everest of solo Bach. It's the biggie. And I'm actually listening to a lot of recordings as I walk around in the neighborhood. Initially when the pandemic started and everybody was so understandably frightened about it, I would walk around in our neighborhood and it was so ghostly quiet, and I'd listen to Bach and I would realize that it was quiet, but I wasn't alone. Everybody was in the building. Everybody was in the houses. And so it was this weird kind of feeling of, being amongst people, but very separate. And I had the fortune of listening to a lot of different recordings of great artists, including Thomas Kotik, who's professor at Portland State. He has a new recording of the Bach. Others, Thomas Zetmeyer is fabulous, Baroque kind of approach to playing it. My old teacher, Greg Fulkerson, has a great recording. And of course, Heinrich Schering recording of the solo Bachs is extraordinary. And, there's so much, talk about with Bach, the performance style that has evolved over the years. And, you listen to period instrumentalists' approach to it. It's at a different pitch level. It's without a lot of vibrato and with different kind of bow. And so, modern violinists are always, dealing with, the challenge, do we play this old style music on a contemporary instrument, and on and on and on. So, it's the perfect companion during these times. It really is.
Yes. Speaking of the Chaconne, yes, Mount Everest, and treacherous waters. I remember a good friend of mine playing a graduate recital. Played the second sonata, which of course ends with the Chaconne. Really amazing player, and she got through the first few movements, beautiful, and then started playing the Chaconne. And then made a wrong turn and skipped the whole major section, and
perfect.
And then ended. It was like a 4-minute Chaconne, and then it's like once she made the turn and she realized where she was, it's like she just kind of kept going and then just ended.
Well, there are moments in some of the fugues where if you make the wrong turn, then you create a loop.
Right. Yes.
And you could be stuck in Bach land forever, and I've done that before, where you're playing and you're like, oh dang it, I made the wrong turn, and now I'm back at the beginning, and then you're like, I got to make the right turn when I get there.
Yeah, the A minor fugue is
exactly
like a trap.
Famous for that.
Feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know how I used to memorize stuff really well, and as I've gotten older, I'm less confident in my memorization. But man, God bless the people who can do that. And anyway, Bach is the ultimate test, isn't it?
Yeah. It's so universal, and it's home. It feels like home. It's so remarkable that it can feel like home to so many people from so many different backgrounds all around the world, because we've spent so much time with this music.
And I think maybe there's something to be said for the purity of the intent behind the music. Bach was a devout religious man, and he was always guided by the divine. And so you feel like that's, an opportunity to connect with a divine source in this music. I mean, it's not, there's no it's not self-referential. It's really, it has its eye on heaven, and that's another reason why we are drawn to the music, for sure.
And it keeps inspiring people, composers and creators in all kinds of genres. Bluegrass, jazz. Like you hear Bach in many different unexpected places at times.
Well, and he also was a great innovator with the well-tempered clavier and the whole major minor tonality system, which comes along, and Bach is right in the middle of that major moment in music history. So, it's interesting that's an interesting thing to realize in light of technology right now. You always ask yourself, what would Mozart do with the technology we have now, and what would those guys do? And the truth is that composers have dealt with major technological shifts throughout history. Whether it's the piano, the modern piano, or the equal tempered tuning, the violin, the change of technology that makes the violin the modern violin that it is. In Bach's case, this radical reimagination of temperament and major minor tonality. I mean, throughout history, composers have always dealt with technological shifts, and that's, of course, happening now too.
Yeah. Ron, we have a question from our good friend Chris Fotinakis, who is, of course, violinist and teacher, and he's the strings coach for one of our ensembles at MYS, our Interlude Orchestra. And Chris is asking if you ever played with the Oregon East Symphony in Pendleton while you were growing up.
Yes, I have. I've played. I've been a soloist with them several times, and every chance I get out there and have that opportunity to meet with my friends in that organization and sit in with them, it's a wonderful organization. Pendleton is a remarkable place for the arts. They have a massive roundup rodeo every fall, and that's a big deal. Now they have a whiskey festival in the summer.
Hey.
But they also have a real community-wide support of classical music and art. And so it's a wonderful group out there. Love those guys. And when I was growing up, I played with the Walla Walla Symphony, Oregon East Symphony, Mid-Columbia Symphony in the Tri-Cities, and can't remember who else. Anyway.
Now, while all of that was happening, did you have your sights set on the Oregon Symphony in any way? Did you ever, like growing up, did you tell yourself, I'm gonna be sitting there one day, or no?
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to hear them. I heard Jamie DePriest and the Oregon Symphony come through town on a tour, and that was just, I'll never forget it. I did Appalachian Spring, and first time I got to hear that amazing piece, and yeah, that's life-changing stuff. So sure, I mean, that was always a dream to get an orchestra job, and for me, coming to Oregon was really, again, almost pure fortune, pure luck. I was in graduate school in Boston at the time, and I was coming out to visit my folks. And then I looked on a notice. There was a notice on a bulletin board at the school at New England Conservatory, and it said, audition next week, Oregon Symphony. And I said, well, I'm going out there anyway.
Wow, cool, okay.
So I took the audition, and, I don't want to make it sound like, just, hey, what the heck, just threw stuff together. I was in Boston with a teacher who was kicking my butt every day. I mean, there was nothing scarier than playing in a James Buswell masterclass. So I was in really, really good playing shape, and my teacher made sure that happened. So I was ready for the audition, and was lucky enough to be one of two people they hired that year. And I've been here ever since 1990.
Who was the other one? Are they still here?
He's not here. Tristan Lainert is his name. I don't know if he's even playing the violin. He's back east with his family. He moved back, left quite a few years ago.
Did you find out same day, or like were you still in town when you found out?
Earl, I am confessing all my knucklehead maneuvers. I'll never. The day of the audition, there were two things that happened. Okay, so I'll demonstrate the first one. In the finals of the audition, we were they asked for sight reading, okay? And the sight reading piece was from the Schubert C major symphony. I think the great C major, that's the big one, right? And the minuet and the trio, That one, and that first section ends with a, and I ended up going. I played it really, and I played it very confidently. It added a B flat, made it a minor chord. And I remember I turned around and looked at the committee, and I just went. I remember the concertmaster and Jimmy, everybody was laughing. And I was like, well, I think that was, I think it's okay.
You must have owned it. You must have
totally.
You really sold it.
Totally. In for a penny, in for a pound. And then I left and went shopping with my mom. She took me to Lloyd Center, and I was shopping for socks. And I was like, well, they'll let me know what happened. And I got a phone call. They said, hustle back. You got to play again. We want to hear you again. So I hustled back and walked out on stage without warming up and had to play Don Juan and a bunch of other stuff. And, made it through somehow. But yeah, that was an interesting day.
Were you done with your master's?
Yeah, I'd finished my master's degree at that point, and that was in the spring when the audition took place. That was spring break. That's why I was out to visit my folks. So it was late March, April, and then I knew I had a job, so I had to leave Boston and move. Sadly, because I loved Boston. Boston is a great city for art and culture, and I was getting more and more opportunities to be a freelance musician, and I could see a future there. But Portland was where I needed to be, and it's home, and I'm an Oregonian, and proud and happy that it worked out that way.
Yeah. Well, and we have all benefited from that because you've been doing incredible work.
Thanks.
That I want to ask you about. But before we do that, we are yet to set up the game that we play on this show, our two truths and a lie, which we normally do closer to the beginning of these sessions. But here we are. So for those of you watching, if you're not familiar with this, we have our guests share 3 statements. 2 of them are true. 1 of them is a lie. If you're watching, your job is to vote on the comments, whether you are on YouTube or Facebook, for which of these statements you believe is a lie. So, Ron, do you have those around?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
So,
all right.
Please share statement A.
Statement A. I spent summers in graduate school playing in the Boston subways.
Okay, that's up on the screen. Statement B.
My wife and I went skydiving on our first date.
Okay, and statement C.
While I was in music school in Oberlin, Ohio, I spent an entire winter term project not wearing any shoes.
Okay, so they're up on the screen right now. I actually don't know which one is the lie. So I'm also playing. So let me just... So you went to NEC, so you were in Boston, so there's likelihood there. Skydiving, that's a pretty daring first date, but I could see you guys doing that. And statement C, you went to Oberlin, and I think that sounds so Oberlin to me. So I think all 3 are I haven't made up my mind, but I'll keep thinking about it while we talk.
Okay.
So Third Angle, 17 years with Third Angle.
Yes.
How old is Third Angle? So it was already.
It already existed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It started off. It was founded, I believe, in 1985, by Judy Bokar. Judy was a violist in town. Her husband at the time, Vincent McDermott, was a composition faculty at Lewis and Clark. And Judy started off the organization that was called Virtuosi della Rosa back then.
Wow, okay.
Then there was a name change to Third Angle, and I remember being told that was the name, although no one could really explain what it meant. Only that it suggested some wider perspective. I've never, I was horrible at defining it and explaining what it was, but I would always tell people that it's not what the genesis of the name means. It's more about what we do and how we define it ourselves with the work that we were doing. So yeah, 17 years there as the artistic director.
And the name got changed to Third Angle before you came in.
That's right. Yeah.
And
so,
was the main focus of the group new music? Has it always been
yes.
new music?
Oh, well, initially with Judy, the focus was on music of women composers and minorities. That really was the focus, and that was a focus and a legacy that we maintained throughout my time there, and I know that they're maintaining it as well going forward since I've left. So that's always an important mission, a worthy mission for sure.
When you look back at those 17 years, what are you most proud of?
Oh boy. I remember when my predecessor left and asked me to become the artistic director. And I remember he said, there's nowhere else to go with it. That he had, at the time we had done the tango opera by Astor Piazzolla, done an amazing performance of it. We had sold out Reed. We'd had a lot of success, and it was time for my colleague to move on. And the first project that we did was bring out the composer, Steve Reich from New York. And Jeff had programmed Music for 18 Musicians by Steve Reich. And if you don't know this piece, you guys really need to listen to it. And if you don't know who Steve Reich is, he's a contemporary of Philip Glass, minimalist composer, although he hates the term minimalist because there's so many notes in the music, it's hard to square the idea of minimalism with all that busy music. But Music for 18 Musicians literally has 18 musicians. It has 4 pianos, it has 6 percussionists and singers and wind players, and it's a major, major undertaking. So I was thrown into the bathwater with that project right off the bat. But I got to meet Steve Reich, and we brought him out for that, and that was a real life-changing moment. And with Third Angle, every step of the way with my predecessors, and I like to think with myself, and then with Sarah now with leading the group, every point, every major project just raised the stakes and opened up new doors. So having Steve here was a big one. And then after that, we did lots of projects where I'm always a fan of context in music. For me, I was noticing how we would program a piece of music by a Chinese composer, for example, and we would do it at Reed, and it would be one type of listening experience. And then we would do it in the Chinese garden, and it would be a completely different kind of listening experience, all because of the environment changed. And so I become really, really interested in how visual context dilates our ears for how we hear music or how we're willing to hear music. Even people who had never heard any contemporary piece in their lives would go to the Chinese garden and hear a contemporary piece by Chen Yi and say, wow, that was really, really great. Now, maybe they were more influenced by the surroundings or anything, or maybe that doesn't even matter. So that's prompted me to really seek projects that experiment with visual context. I mean, I love the idea of having, like, once we did a project where we did, we called it frozen music, and it was, frozen music is a term by, I think Schopenhauer actually said it, but sometimes Goethe is given credit for it. Frozen music being architecture is frozen music. That's the quote. So we did neoclassic music in the US Bank building downtown. And I love the idea of Stravinsky being a soundtrack for people going in this amazing neoclassic architecture and, withdrawing money from the ATM, hearing Stravinsky or Poulenc. And I love the idea of enriching the experience of seeing a magnificent architectural space and then connecting that style, visual style, with the musical style. I think that enriches the experience of both. So we did lots of projects following that idea. One we did at at the Alvar Aalto designed library out at Mount Angel Abbey,
Yes,
which
beautiful
is
place.
a spectacular place. You guys need to go out there and just go into the library. It's one of only two buildings that Aalto designed in the United States, and it is a masterpiece. So that series of concerts was really, really special. And of course, we did tours of Asia and took Oregon composers' music all over the place. So that was very proud of all of that for sure.
I love how Portland allows this ecosystem of performing arts organizations where you guys, of course, playing with the Oregon Symphony, one of
Yes.
the great orchestras in this
It all
country.
starts with that, yes.
Right? It allows for you guys to also, create these very out of the box ideas and projects and things that just because of the size of a symphony orchestra you can't really do, but you guys are able to with Third Angle and now with 45th Parallel Universe to sort of exercise that part of your creativity and that part of your artistry.
Well, and the smaller scale of our smaller organizations is actually a real asset these days, as we are all attempting to pivot to the new reality that the pandemic has presented us. We all have to pivot and understand where our creativity will lie in this circumstance.
Yeah. Now, 45th Parallel Universe was the word universe added kind of recently?
2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So will you talk to us about that?
Well, 45th Parallel was founded by my colleague Greg Ewer, who's a phenomenal violinist and musician, and he and I are actually playing tomorrow night on our live stream thing. And Greg is just a spectacular violinist. He recently played the whole Bach First Sonata on a live stream last week. I mean, just exceptional musician. And he founded 45th Parallel 10 years ago, 45th Parallel. And the 45th Parallel, of course, is the I guess it's the latitudinal line that goes across I always make sure I get longitude and latitude correct, but it's the line that cuts through the middle of the state. And we added universe because a couple of years ago when I became executive director, we reimagined the group or the organization as a collective of small groups. So we have two string quartets, the Musée Remix Quartet, and my string quartet, Pixis String Quartet, two string quartets, a percussion group with my colleagues John Greeny and Sergio Carreno, and then a wind quintet, the Arcturus Wind Quintet, with my colleagues James Shields, Martha Long, Karen Wagner, Joe Berger, Steve Vaki, and I'm probably forgetting somebody. My apologies to them for that. So that's why we are a universe. And we... so it's been awesome. It's been so much fun, and we've expanded our concerts, and it's given me an opportunity to continue just being creative.
Yeah. Now let me ask you something before we go on around. Do you have like 3 extra minutes after 5 p.m.? Yeah. We can go over a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So because I want to show our viewers a short video of a really extraordinary project that you guys did with 45th Parallel, Liborio, and I want to ask you about that. But before, I think it's time to reveal your truths in your life. Okay? So let's, if you have not voted, you have a few more seconds to do it. So let's start by revealing one of your truths, please.
Okay. The first truth is that I met my wife in Southern Oregon at the Peter Britt Music Festival. And that was 28 years ago. And we were hanging out one night, and this movie was being shown. It was with Keanu Reeves. It was called Point Break, and Patrick Swayze. And in the movie, there's a bunch of skydiving. And so my wife said, then, just hopefully my wife at that point said, hey, let's go skydiving. So she organized actually there was a group of us. It was not just she and I together, but there were 6 of us that went skydiving. Out of 6 of us, 2 had to go to their backup parachutes. We saw the chute cut away, and then the other chute open, and we saw all the employees in the airport just hustling like it was a catastrophe. And the end of that story is that night, I was the concertmaster of the Brit Festival, and I showed up. I had to drive right to the concert and get on stage and play. And I was so, I'd just fallen out of a plane for 10,000 feet, and I could barely play, but made it through the concert. So that's a truth.
Wow. Okay. That is crazy. You've never done it before.
Never, and never since. No.
Has she done it, Anne?
That was her first time as well. She's much braver than I am.
You're a poker player. This was a really risky bet.
Yeah, the plane door opens and you say, why am I jumping out of a perfectly good plane? What is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Yeah.
Worked out.
It worked out. Still here.
Wow. Okay. That's okay. You got me there. I really didn't think that would be one of your truths. But,
that's a truth.
Wow. Okay. And what's your other truth?
When I was in grad school in Boston, my summer job was to play in the subways. I had a buddy who was a cellist, and we would go and set up in the Harvard T stop on the first platform. And we would play Eine kleine Nacht music over and over and over and over again. And we did really well. We made about $120 an hour.
Hey.
Because every time a train would come, we'd get about 30 people that would stop, and they'd each give us $1, and worked out great. There was one time, there were 2 interesting little sub stories to this. One time Yo-Yo Ma walked by.
Did he stop?
Yes, he joined us.
No, so cool.
He played with us for just a little bit, and then he lives in Cambridge, so that was kind of fun. And another time, we got a note that said, "You guys are really great, but you need to learn some new music. So learn something else." So we brought in the Ravel duo at one time, and no one stopped. We made no money, so we said, we need to go back to the Mozart.
Gotta go to the best-selling.
Yeah. Play the hits, man.
Play the hits. Cool. Okay. Well, that leaves statement C to be your lie, which the kind of like stereotypical like Oberlin.
Well, and the reason why it rang as a possible truth to you was because I had a really close friend who actually did that.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. And that's if you know Oberlin at all, it's such an Oberlin thing to do. It's just, and January in Oberlin, Ohio is brutal.
Yeah.
It's just snow and freezing cold. I was like, dude, whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
If you need a ride, let me know.
Okay. Okay, well, there you have it. You got me, because I would have guessed B. I thought that was too risky for you know what I thought? Probably happened, but not for a first date. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me show our viewers this video about Liborio, and then we'll talk about it. This is, just coolest thing. So here it is. So it's about 3 minutes long.
Which is what I would do.
Only if you have extra.
See the players.
I'm
gonna hide behind a couple of screens during the dress. Just sit there. Specifically.
Okay, so w- let's start with this. What is Liborio? And then what was this amazing project that you guys did?
Well, Les Boreades is the opera, famous opera by Jean-Philippe Rameau. Um, and Les Boreades refers to the followers or the disciples of Boreas, the god of the north wind. It's an opera from the Baroque era. It's a French opera, and Rameau is actually quite famous not just as a composer but also as a theoretician. He wrote a famous treatise on music theory. This project, again, as I said earlier, I love context. I love how environment informs context. And um, for this project, we brought out actually a professor from Princeton who has been on Netflix and YouTube and all over the place, and is writing about the psychology of listening to music. And she gave a talk about how visual context. So, I mean, it was a whole evening that was experimental about this subject. Um, I had a very good friend, Brad Johnson, who was the artist that you saw. His work was done there. Years ago with Third Angle, we did a project where we created a virtual venue where we surrounded the audience with screens and transported them into another kind of visual space. And Brad and I were talking about what we could do next. And Brad connected us with Glowbox and Thomas Wester, a wonderful Portland company that's doing a lot of work in virtual reality. And so we've conceived of this idea. How do we imagine, how can we create a virtual environment and have that be the backdrop for music, for classical music? And so that's what you saw. We had the audience, we had screens on either side of the audience that were these theatrical scrims where the density of the image depended, that made the translucence of the screen or your ability to see through the screen depended on the density of the image. So at times you could really see the image and not the musicians, and at times you saw through the screen and could see the players. And so that's how we created a quasi three-dimensional effect. And the art itself is processed through a computer process that's very, very complicated. But bottom line is that Brad took a bunch of aerial photography and film and translated it into this computer pointillistic kind of thing. The images included the crater of Mount St. Helens, the Stonehenge monument out at Maryhill. And the other thing I love about this, especially now that we can't go to concerts, is this idea potentially of being able to put on a virtual reality headset and go and hear a concert of 45th Parallel playing French music in the Louvre. Yeah. And with the other thing that we're working on, we could even do that where we're each playing from our own homes. Yeah. So that was Les Boreades, and it was a real phenomenal statement of the creative community of Portland. It was visual art, it was technological art, it was a whole bunch of interested parties coming together to see if we could do something like that, and we did it.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about what you're doing now, because it's like the holy grail of remote performances you guys found. So will you share about that, please?
Well, this Friday we've launched a series called the Portland Social Distance Ensemble. And we started producing Friday night live streams at 6 o'clock, started the beginning of May. This will be our sixth one, I believe. My dear friend, Danny Rosenberg has built an application that allows us to form chamber music groups remotely, individually from each from our houses. And so we had a jazz group last week, John Nastos, sax, and his colleague on piano, but then the bass player is in Chicago. So if you go to our YouTube channel and see that, that's the thing you have to keep in mind, is that we are working with players. My colleague James Shields has a project coming up in a few weeks where the cellist is in New York City, the violist is in Edmonton, Canada, and then James and Emily are in Portland. But the application allows them to form a cohesive ensemble to play some very, very difficult music. So that's a new frontier for sure. Tomorrow night, my friend Greg Ewer and I will be playing duets by Kenji Bunch, and with Kenji hosting, and he'll be a presence. And so we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. We'll each be in our own homes. I'll be right here in my office, and Greg will be in his house, and Kenji will be at his place, and we'll have some fun.
And we have a clip to show about that. But
Yeah, Mr.
before, I
Sir.
mean, we really have to underline here how incredible this is, because all of us musicians have been dealing with these, with the challenge of how do we create truly live performances, ensemble performances. And for anybody who's watching who's not familiar with the challenges, I mean, latency and delay are the big barrier here. And that's why we can't just get on a Zoom call and play our instruments together, because there's delay, there's latency. So it was really impossible to do this truly live. So what you guys found is a way to do just that. And that is one of the reasons why this is really extraordinary and groundbreaking. And when you watch these videos, and you'll watch, we're all gonna watch your stream tomorrow at 6 p.m. Like, it's easy to forget, how just extraordinary it is that you guys together, created this platform where you can actually play together at the same time. And I am so excited and so proud that that's happening right here in Portland, and that you guys are leading the way nationally, globally. I really doing this type of performance. So let me show this clip about your stream tomorrow.
Okay.
And then I'll ask you a little bit more about that, and then we'll be out of time. We'll make sure
Very good.
Over time, but
Okay.
this is great. So thank you for staying. So here's a video about tomorrow evening's 6 p.m. live stream from the Portland Social Distance Ensemble. Here we go. Okay, so Ron, tell us just a little bit more. Oh, wait, it's looping back. Hold on. And there you are. Okay, so tell us just a little bit more about what we can expect tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Well, Kenji has composed, he's undertaken a really interesting project. For the fiddle players out there, you might know of the Bartók 44 duos, famous folk tunes that Bartók transcribed. And they run the gamut from very simple to very difficult, but that's an iconic set of music. And Kenji has used that as inspiration to write his own set of 44 duets. But in the hands of Kenji, Kenji's idiom is also folk music. I mean, it's very similar, and as you could hear, there's a little bit of country fiddling style and just really wonderful, fun stuff. So Greg and I will be playing 7 of those duets, and also actually Kenji will make an appearance and play a solo piece of his own.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can find that how tomorrow
on our website, 45thparallelpdx.org. And if you search on YouTube for 45th Parallel Universe. You'll find our YouTube channel there, and Facebook. It's streamed on Facebook and YouTube.
Very good. Yeah, do not miss this one and any other upcoming live streams by 45th Parallel Universe, and it's just so exciting to see this happening right
Thanks,
now,
Raul.
and we're all inspired by your work.
Well, you're very kind. The chance to connect with people during these times is a gift, really, from my friend Danny Rosenberg. He created it for us to be able to use, and we're very grateful to him.
Yes, yes. Ron, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and hanging out with all of us. So
yeah.
We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then we'll be paying attention to everything else coming from you and everything you're doing. So thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. Keep up the good work, and bravo to Raul and your wonderful organization.
Thank you, Ron. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Okay, folks. So there you have it. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Add this to your calendar to check out 45th Parallel Universe's live stream. You'll see Ron and Greg Ewer from the Oregon Symphony and from 45th Parallel Universe playing duos. Thank you for watching. If you have not subscribed to the MYS YouTube channel, please do so. We are currently at 996 subscribers. We want to get to 1,000. So we're almost there. So please subscribe. If you have already subscribed, please tell your friends to do so. This is actually an important milestone for our YouTube channel. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be able to use our YouTube channel as a way to create some revenue for MYS from our videos, and every little bit helps, as you know, for any nonprofit organization. So please subscribe and join me again Tuesday of next week at 4 p.m. We're going to be talking with Rachel Sokolow. She is currently an artist manager with MKI Artists, and before that she worked with Schirmer, the music publishing giant. So we'll get a really interesting perspective from Rachel about the world of music publishing and the world of artist management. And then Thursday, 1 week from today, June 18th at 4 p.m., we will be joined by Jun Iwasaki. He is the concertmaster of the Nashville Symphony, and he is a former concertmaster of the Oregon Symphony. So thank you again, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you Tuesday.